All right, I think we'll get started. Can you all hear me? Great. I'm Nathan Webster. I'm an associate at Dorsey and Whitney, and I'm the vice president of the Minnesota chapter of the American Constitution Society. The American Constitution Society is a progressive law organization dedicated to upholding the rule of law, and we are pleased to bring you the 2026 Hennepin County Attorney Candidate Forum. We have some excellent moderators, the Honorable Peter Cahill and Anna Petoskey, and we're also pleased to welcome every candidate, Anders Folk, Cedric Frazier, Diane Krenz, Matt Pelican, and Hao Wen. And with that, I will turn it over to our moderators. Thank you so much.
Can you hear this? I don't know if okay, good deal. I'm Pete Cahill, and I'm going to co-moderate with Anna Petoskey. And I want to welcome you to this forum. I want to emphasize the fact that this is a forum. It's not a debate. So no fighting. We expect that we have a number of questions to ask. Most of these are based on questions that you submitted, those of you who are in the audience, either virtually or here in the room. And we may have moderated them a little bit, sandpapered, so to speak, to take a little bit of the confrontational edges off. But most of these questions are, in fact, submitted by you, the audience. And so we will do our best to get through them. One thing you need to understand is that we are recording this. The recording will be available publicly, so there's no need to hold up your camera, your phone, and to record yourselves, because we will have something available after this is all over. So with that, oh, ground rules. Yeah, that's a good thing. See, Anna's here because I have a bad memory because I'm old and retired. What we're going to do is we're going to start with a 2-minute opening statement. We're going to go question by question, 2 minutes for each response. We're going to start with Mr. Folk, and then we're going to go down. Then the next question will shift down to Mr. Frazier, and then we'll go to and start each question with a new candidate, to make it fair that it's not always fair to be the one under the gun. Get a little more chance to think about some of your answers this week. And they will be 2 minutes. And then we expect 2 minutes for the closing. If we have a little more time, we might give them a little more. But the 2-minute closing essentially is for them to say whatever they would like to convince you that they should be county attorney. And we do not need recording. In fact, candidates have said we prefer not to, but it will be available for you. So with that, I think we'll get started. And the candidates already know, but just to emphasize for people in the audience, we are going to have 2 minutes per answer, and we do have a timekeeper who's going to show a 30-second left card, followed by a stop. I will verbally repeat the stop because sometimes I know when you all get into your answers, you're not watching the time and you're just going. So what we're going to do is when the stop sign comes up, I hate to be rude, but I will say stop verbally. Please complete your sentence. Don't convert it into a run-on sentence. And then finish, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunity for you to say everything you wanted in these close to 2 hours that we're going to have. So.
Very good. Thank you, Judge Cahill. And now, Judge Cahill, will you ask Mr. Folk the first question?
I will.
Thank you.
Anything else you wanted to add to the ground rules?
Not at all.
Like that?
Thank you.
Okay. The first is a very easy one. Introduce yourself and tell us, why do you want to be Hennepin County Attorney?
I want to make sure I'm not getting ahead of anything. Did you want us to do openings, or were we going to go right into the questions?
We're going to go right.
All right, awesome. So
this is kind of the opening we thought.
good enough. Thank you for having me here tonight. Thank you to the American Constitution Society and Dorsey and Whitney for hosting. Anders Folk. I'm a lifelong Minnesotan. I grew up in Hopkins, went to the University of Minnesota as an undergrad and on for law school. And I am running for Hennepin County Attorney to make this county safe for everybody. During law school, I joined the Marine Corps. I worked at the Hennepin County Attorney's Office in the Juvenile Prosecution Division. And then my first job out of law school was working as a military lawyer in the Marine Corps, both as a prosecutor and a defense lawyer. I came home to Minnesota as a federal prosecutor, where I was lucky enough to work on every kind of case you can imagine in that office, from organized crime to violent crime, gun crime, fraud, and everything else in between. And after some time in private practice, I got called back to public service and was lucky enough to return to the U.S. Attorney's Office and ultimately led the office as the acting U.S. Attorney early in the Biden administration. I'm proud of all the work we did at that time, but I'm maybe most proud of the fact I signed the indictment charging Derek Chauvin with violating George Floyd's civil rights. That was a busy time in the office, and I'm proud to have led the office at that moment. I left that office and went to Washington, D.C. to work for Lisa Monaco, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, and Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. And I helped them on a variety of high-profile matters for the department. And I bring all of that experience to this role, and that too is why I'm running. 2026 brings us Hennepin County being tested in ways it's never been before. We've been subjected to cruel and wanton federal law enforcement actions that have left Minnesotans injured and dead. The next county attorney has to ensure accountability. Technology is posing promise and significant risks to our public safety, whether it's AI fraud that preys on our most vulnerable, whether it's ghost guns being manufactured in homes and sold on the streets. We've lost our U.S. Attorney's Office as a partner. I'm here to help, and I want to make Hennepin County safe for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for stopping. Mr. Frazier, only because the stop sign came up and he immediately stopped. So following the rules, good deal. Mr. Frazier.
Again, thanks everybody for having me tonight. Glad to be here this evening. I'm glad to see so many people here in the room. And I know there's a ton of people that are watching on video. So thank you all for watching as well. I'll cut straight to the chase. This can't be business as usual. We are under attack by our federal government. Our president has said that he's out for retribution in our state. There's 2.5 years of this presidency left, we hope, with the way things are going. What that means is that county attorney's office around the country, including ours here, we're on the front line. We're on the front line to protect civil rights, human rights, and our freedoms. I'm running for this office because I believe I am the leader to do that. I ran for office the first time when I became a state representative because Donald Trump was in office, to push back and to fight back against authoritarianism and fascism. I will continue that fight. I will bring that energy to this office. This is exactly what voters are asking for, and I plan to lead exactly that way. That's why I'm running for Hennepin County Attorney.
Thank you. Ms. Krenz.
Thank you. I'm Diane Krenz, and I'm running for Hennepin County Attorney to return the office to its core mission. There are lots of missions of the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, but the one almost everyone thinks of is prosecution. And what we need to do is get back to having justice done by the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. I have worked for 4 elected Hennepin County attorneys. I've seen what's worked, and I have seen what has not worked. I can tell you that I started in 1983, and I worked there until 2025. My almost entire career was in criminal prosecution. I did appellate work when I was a law clerk. I did juvenile prosecution. I did adult cases, specializing in criminal sexual conduct, criminal vehicular homicides, you name it, I did it. In the early 2000s, I was moved to the gang team where I did homicides. I was also assigned to the Little Earth housing complex because there was a lot of gang activity. And frankly, the U.S. Attorney's Office said, "Oh, we can't prosecute those cases because no one gets a conviction." Well, I was able to get convictions of people that committed murders there. After that, I became the gun specialist doing felon in possession cases. I moved on to property where I prosecuted career offenders, people with 3 to 36 prior felonies. And then I finished my career there in the white collar crime team, where we did fraud cases, embezzlements, and large scale identity theft cases. Thank you very much.
Great. Mr. Wett.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Thank you to ACS and Dorsey and Whitney. Also to thank you, the people that are online. My name is Hao Wen, and I come before you an immigrant and a refugee. When I was around 7 years old, my single mother took us 3 boys and we fled Vietnam after the war, ended up in the refugee camps of the Philippine Islands. And for 2 years, I really understood what it was like to live at the margins of society. I truly believe we won the lottery when we were sponsored by Catholic Charities to come to the US. And after the year that we've had here in Minnesota, I now know we also got to come to the greatest state in the union, that is Minnesota. I've been very fortunate to be able to get myself through college as well as a law school. I am a child of public assistance, EBT, and food stamps. The voice that you hear is a voice given to me by an English as a second language teacher. The body that you see is because of food given to me and my family. I have a deep sense of public service and to give back. I've been, like I said, a correctional officer, a police officer, and for the last 16 years, I've been a prosecutor. I now currently lead the criminal trial division in Ramsey County Attorney's Office. I have tried cases for murder, homicide, and everything in between. I also know how to run a county attorney's office, budget, personnel, and everything else. I know that we can, more than ever, we need experienced leadership in the county attorney's office. We can hold people accountable who commit crimes, but we can also uplift the voices of victims of crime. I know we can do this because I've done it, and I need your help and support to do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Pelican.
Good evening. My name is Matt Pelican. I want to also thank Dorsey and ACS for hosting this, and I want to thank the great candidates on the stage for running. I think there's some really talented people. I tell this joke, and not everyone gets it, but it's a room of lawyers, and say it's easier to prosecute a case against a good lawyer than a bad lawyer because they actually know what they're doing. And I think the same as a candidate. It's really an honor to run with some great public servants. I'm a lifelong Minnesotan. I grew up in Northfield with Paul Wellstone as my hometown hero and went to St. Olaf College for undergrad. First part of my career, I worked professionally in campaigns. I worked for Paul and Mark Dayton when he was U.S. Senator and candidates around the country. Came back here for law school, went to the University of Minnesota Law School where I was editor-in-chief of the Law Review. Then I clerked on the Minnesota Supreme Court for two justices, Paul Anderson and David Lillehog, before going into private practice, first at the Robbins Kaplan firm. I left that in 2016 to oversee voter protection for Hillary Clinton's campaign in Ohio, for around 300 lawyers paid and volunteer to be in polling places and educate voters about their rights on election day. Came back here, I ran for Minnesota Attorney General, also because of the Trump administration and knowing that we needed strong progressives in office. And since then, I've been in private practice, largely for the Mattel firm. This year has been a strange year. January 14th, I found out that my law firm of 9 years was representing Jonathan Ross, the agent who shot Renee Good. The next day, I quit. We have been under attack, and Minnesotans deserve to know which side we are on. And I'm on the side of the people of Minnesota against the secret police that were sent here. I'm running because safety and justice aren't opposites. They're not competing values, they're the whole job. And we have to stop pretending like accountability and fairness are choices that we have to make. We have to have both of them. And we need an office that continues to push for justice in our society and remembers that progressive communities have to be safe, thriving communities. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And this next question will start with you, Mr. Frazier. The Hennepin County Attorney's Office is best known for its prosecutorial functions. Likewise, the office has quite a few civil-related divisions, including child protection, mental health commitments, child support, and civil representation of the county and its departments. What is your experience in these areas, and do you have any initiatives in mind for these divisions?
Thank you. Yeah, when I left I started my career as a criminal defense attorney in Hennepin County Public Defender's Office. I left there to go to Minneapolis Public School, where I ended up in the General Counsel's office, advising Minneapolis Public Schools, complex organization, dealing with many of those issues, interacting with state level in the Department of Human Services, also at the county level as well, responding to civil rights complaints, responding to Title VII investigation. So yes, have plenty of experience on the civil side, managing cases, managing outside counsel, and also responding to those issues as well internally. A big thing I think about is our young people. Many of the questions that I've had with thousands of conversations that I've had during this campaign is, I believe that we failed as policymakers to provide resources for our young folks, especially when they make bad decisions and we have to remove them from their homes or their community to keep them safe. We have not done a great job of investing to make sure we have places to put those young folks and then provide resources for them. That will be a big part of my priorities and working along with our public education institutions, our community advocate leaders. I will be doing that work directly, building those relationships, focusing on those issues, working with our county commissioners to get resources that we need to invest in that, because I believe we take care of our young people, it goes a long way down the line in ensuring that we have safe communities. Because one thing I know, when we have to intervene with our young folks, the best thing for us to do is to make sure they get the resources they need so they're not tied to the system for 10, 20, 30 years. We all pay the cost for that. And I think it's unacceptable with what we've done over the last few decades.
Thank you very much. Ms. Krenz, same question.
Thank you very much. Well, one of the things that first comes to mind is our mental health commitment division. I really think that that's very important work. One of the things that's happened in this current administration is that they are no longer looking at sexually dangerous offenders and looking to commit them to Moose Lake. And I think that that's something that needs to be reinstituted because there's an awful lot of evidence that shows people like that just don't reform, unfortunately. So that's one of the things that I specifically would do. The deal with child protection, child support, and civil is they have clients. So the civil division represents the commissioners, they represent the sheriff, they do all sorts of things. So they're often advising them. And I think the role of the county attorney is to make sure you have good lawyers advising those people. And the same thing with child protection. That division is advising the social workers. And I think you need to make sure that you have very experienced people and people who like that kind of work doing that. And as far as child support is, that seems to be a division that's very run by statute. I don't know that I have anything that I would change with that because my biggest concern is mental health.
Thank you, Ms. Krenz. Mr. Wen?
So, I agree with a lot of what my other panelists have said. I think one of the things that we got to talk about and that I really care about are the gap cases, the Rule 20 gap cases. Those are the mental health gap cases. So oftentimes, while a crime has been committed, a defense attorney might ask for a Rule 20 evaluation. That Rule 20 evaluation really then goes towards competency of the individual standing before the criminal court. But at the same time, there's a civil court going on, whether or not someone is going to be designed or designated as severe, persistent, and mentally ill, and also dangerous to the public. Those two things do not go sort of in tandem together. And every once in a while, we'll have a situation where there's a housing issue and someone's released out into the public before they're actually committed in an institution. We need to make sure that those gap cases don't occur. Lots of crime can occur from that, and violence can be had. And so we really need to make sure that that gap is closed. There's a ton of training that needs to happen on the civil side with regard to the civil Rule 20 folks in the county attorney's office, as well as the criminal folks. I think one of the things that often the criminal lawyers who are handling the prosecution, they basically say, oh, it's a Rule 20 case. Okay, I'm just going to pause and be out and close my ears and eyes to it. The civil side will work. The civil side is suffering from lack of beds, lack of housing, and lack of mental health care and services. So we got to close that gap. One thing that we talked about is child support. It's run by statute, but we also have to talk about the volume that those workers are experiencing. So we need to make sure we have more personnel there doing the good work of feeding our children, collecting revenue, making sure kids are fed and families are together. And I know I'm on a stop here, so I will do that.
Thank you, Mr. Wen. Mr. Pelican?
Thank you. I have a diverse practice. I have done a lot of civil litigation. One of my passions in my practice has been representing victims of harassment and obtaining HROs, which are an important tool, as well as working on internal governance and criminal defense matters. My approach to the office is going to be simple. Keep what's working and you change what isn't. I think that I'm a Democrat. We're the party of data. And the data is promising in many of the directions that office has moved in, but it's not enough. And one of my fears is that we are going to be pushed in one of two directions, either doubling down on the current approach, which is working in some ways, but not in others, or going back to an approach that failed us before. And I think we have to keep the innovations that have been put in place. The diversion program for youth is working. And change things that aren't, including some real lapses of judgment in specific prosecutions. I also think in that office, specific to the question of running it, that has changed is that the reporting structure has been flattened. And my understanding now is that many of the line prosecutors in the office, great career professionals working very hard, don't necessarily understand who their supervisor is. They'll get a direction from the county attorney and not understand why she's even looking at a file. and be overruled without the benefit of a meeting. And we have to return to having clear management and structure and clear guidelines in that office. And that's one of the reasons that some of these strange prosecution decisions have come out.
Thank you. Mr. Folk?
Thank you. The Hennepin County Attorney's Office is the largest public law office in the state of Minnesota. I think they actually have even more lawyers than they do here at Dorsey and Whitney. And it is filled with dedicated, hardworking career public servants who are doing some of the hardest and most challenging work day in and day out of any lawyers in the state of Minnesota, whether it's child protection, whether it's homicides, sex assaults. These are some of the hardest cases you'll ever deal with as a prosecutor. And they deserve a leader who has been there and stood in their shoes and knows how to run an office. And I spent my time at the U.S. Attorney's Office, both as a prosecutor, learning how to build cases and working from the ground up, working with law enforcement agents, judges, probation officers, and all the community folks who care so deeply about public safety. And then I was lucky enough to get elevated to run that office and actually supervise those prosecutors. And I'll tell you, that experience, both on the criminal and civil side, I will bring to this race and to the office if elected. And, on the criminal side, it's everything you think about in a county attorney's office, from gang cases, murder cases, sex assaults, protecting our juveniles, protecting our most vulnerable. And on the civil side, again, it's this protection and taking care of so many people who oftentimes can't take care of themselves. And again, my lived experience, both as a prosecutor, as a civil lawyer, and as a leader in that office, I think will be instrumental in helping to lead the county attorney's office. I alluded to this in the opening. Now more than ever, whether it's federal government agents coming to Minnesota and killing Minnesotans on the street, and a Department of Justice that refuses to do anything, whether it is the advent of technology that is impacting every element of our lives, not the least of which is, how do you talk to your kids about using the internet? Anybody in this room who has kids has thought at least once, my God, what are they seeing on the internet? These are the things that are impacting our lives, and the county attorney's office deserves a leader who cares deeply, but not just who cares, who knows how to do the work, who knows how to take care of the people, and who knows how to lead that office for the people of Hennepin County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaking of management, the day-to-day work of the elected county attorney is actually, or traditionally, not trying cases, but managing the functions of the office and setting policies and perhaps approving dispositions on major cases. So what is your management philosophy, especially as it concerns managing trial attorneys? And where would you look for your management team, internally, externally, and what qualities would you look for in your management team? Ms. Krenz, I think you're up.
Thank you. Well, I would certainly look within the office because, as Mr. Folk said, some of the best lawyers in the state are in that office already. There are people that are in management already that I think are very, very good, and I would keep some of them. There are some people in management at this point that I would not keep because I don't believe that their experience warrants being in management anymore. So that's where I would look for the people. For the last 18 months of my time in the county attorney's office, I was the acting senior attorney of the white collar crime team. And one of the things I did was to try to let my attorneys do their job without a lot of interference, and to meet with them frequently to be able to talk about things. And I think that's one of the things that's been missing for quite some time in that office. I can also parenthetically say I was in the union in AFSCME for over 30 years and was a steward. And so I know some of the issues that have come up, and we used meet and confers a lot to talk to management. And I think that's a very valuable thing. I would want people to be able to come and talk to me about anything that they have concerns with. And I think that I would keep a lot of the people. I would change the management structure a little bit, but I do think that it's very important to make sure that the employees are better cared for than they have been in the last number of years.
Okay, Mr. Witt.
So I'm currently the division director of our trials division and supervise our appellate unit. that has many, many prosecutors in it, paralegal support staff, and everything else. We also have law enforcement embedded in our division, and I oversee all of it. Every time I hire a prosecutor, I ask them, what is justice to them? Right? Because the work of a prosecutor isn't just to be a prosecutor, to get every conviction that you possibly can at any given cost. The prosecution work, and no offense to any lawyers in this room, and there's many, but when you're a prosecutor, you're a minister of justice. So what does that mean? We have to look at defendants because they are people, right? We have to make sure that their constitutional rights are safeguarded. They were someone's mother, brother, sister, etc. We have to look at victims and be able to make sure that we nurture them, care for them, and walk them into a room and look at them eye to eye when the people standing next to them have done the worst things to them on their worst days. We have to look at a jury and say, hey, we understand that this gravity and duty that you're holding today is probably your first time at jury duty and the gravest standard that you're going to take so seriously. We have to make sure that our legislators and our lawmakers are also taken care of. So a minister of justice has to think about all of this, right? Also the law enforcement who works so hard to make sure that the case has gotten to where it's gotten and that their work is not for naught. So when we hire people, I always try to hire hard, right? You can look at a sentencing guideline and just say, go there. And I can teach you how to put in evidence and foundation, but are you going to have heart? And so for me, that's one of the biggest things that we do. I also make sure that our appellate unit works to make on the back end of making sure that we secure our convictions and make sure that we don't create new bad law. So when I talk to my people, I listen to them. They're smarter than me. They do the work. So if I have an idea, but they tell me why that needs to be changed, I listen and we adapt and we collaborate. So my thing is collaboration, provide training, make sure that people become the best prosecutors that they can, and the good prosecutors that we have in the Hennepin County Attorney's Office remain there. Thank you.
Mr. Pelican.
I was talking with a prosecutor in the office, and they said they would love to have a conversation with Mary Moriarty to understand her prosecution philosophy. And it almost broke my heart because I thought, here's someone who is there to protect us, who's going to work every day, and doesn't even understand the values and judgments that are guiding the office. So for me, it's essential as a manager that the people working for me are cared for, listened to, and understood, and the communication goes both ways. I mentioned the structure a little bit in a previous question. I think there needs to be clear management and expectations and making sure that people understand the values and the direction of the office. It is the largest public law office in the state. It's the largest law office in the state. But it's not enough to just announce values. You have to have strong leadership, and that involves communication and management. My own experience in managing both in the political world and legally, and I think it's so important to treat people well and have that clarity in communication and respect. And that's how you can steer an office as large and complex and as important as this one in the right direction. Where the staff would come from, I think you have to come in and you have to be humble and listen to the people who have been doing it and make adjustments where necessary with some of the leadership, as Diane mentioned. So I think you would go in and you would be prudent about it, but obviously there have to be some changes, I think. The last thing on running the office is making sure that the people working there, the great prosecutors and staff, understand that they have an advocate and an ally leading that office. And I unfortunately don't think that's always been the case recently.
Thank you, Mr. Polk.
Thank you. To me, good leaders in a public law office and really in any office, in any organization, but certainly in a public law office, need to be compassionate. They need to be hard workers. They need to lead by example. That is, they would not ask anyone else to do something that they wouldn't themselves do. And they need to treat people with respect, always. And in my experience as a leader at the U.S. Attorney's Office, what I learned and practiced in the Marine Corps, and what I've done in my private practice career, again, leading teams of lawyers, is to try and kind of model those behaviors. And at the U.S. Attorney's Office, I tried to ensure I led by example. And again, that meant if I was going to ask somebody on my leadership team or one of the line assistant U.S. attorneys to do something, it would be something I would myself do or maybe was doing. Always have an open door policy as a leader. I think if there's one sign of bad leadership
in my experience, it's all the doors in the office are closed and it's dead silent, kind of like you're in that Succession, show, and it's just weird, right? That's not a sign of a healthy organization. And so you lead with an open door policy. You always ensure that you are ready to change course if the path you have set isn't working. And if you're doing a good job as a leader, in my experience, and we saw this all the time at the U.S. Attorney's Office, your team, your leadership team, your management team, your line AUSAs are going to come in and say, this ain't working. And as a good leader, you can make a change and you don't castigate that person. You don't make them feel bad for saying your plan isn't working. You say, thank you. How can we make this better? And I'll bring that to the office as well. And if there's one word I think I would describe my leadership style with, it's collaborative. Good leaders are collaborative leaders. They're not a top-down, cram-down person. They're a tell me how we can all do better together. And I think at the county attorney's office, I've spoken to many of the people in management and leadership roles who are there right now, and they're great. And so day one, I'm going to sit down with management, learn from them, and then make decisions based on that. Thank you.
Mr. Frazier.
Thank you. Now I'm just going to steal my word, collaborative. But I agree with you. I think that's very important. I think you have to have an open door policy. I think you need to be visible also. I pride myself when I was in the general counsel's office in Minneapolis, what I would do is I would take walks around the office building. I would make sure people knew who I were, particularly those that I interacted with a lot. They knew that I was not unapproachable. They knew they could come with me with information, and they would work in that manner to come to solutions for problems that we were dealing with. And some of the individuals that I met with in the office, there are some great people there. I believe what I'll do when I go down, I'll sit down, I'll have those conversations. We'll determine what's best and what's needed for the office, and then we'll move accordingly. And I would look inside and outside. I don't think you should preclude yourself from trying to find the best talent to be in that office. And internally, I would say not everybody wants to be a manager. So we don't want to put people in positions that they're not going to be successful in. But when we do put them in those positions, we have to make sure that we give them the training that they need to be successful. And I'll give you an example. When I was in all of the organizations that I've been in, what I often learn is those that work the hardest, the kind of busy bees that get things done, people identify them as someone that could be good managers. But oftentimes what they fail to do is to give them the training that they need to be great managers. And that is very important to do. If you're going to motivate, uplift someone, and promote them to that position, give them the tools they need to be successful. So I'll have those conversations, and it'll be clear to individuals also how they can be promoted in the office. It'll be clear to you how you can elevate yourself in that office. There will be no surprises. You'll have an open door policy. You'll be able to come and communicate with me, and I will bring the voices in the room that need to be there when I make decisions. We often talk about how this is an elected position. That means we're not in the courtroom, but there are people in that office that have tons of experience and know exactly what they're doing, and they can give you the advice you need to make the right decisions. And I will always do that every single day to make sure that we are moving in the right direction. Look, there's people that have been hired in that office, from Mike Freeman for the time that he was there, Amy Klobuchar, and now Mary Moriarty. My goal would be, and my priority would be to make sure that we get all those people working together, moving in the same direction for the betterment of Hennepin County.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. And this next question will begin with Mr. Wen. From a public safety perspective, what are the biggest challenges facing this community? What is the Hennepin County Attorney's Office's role in managing them? And how will you do it?
I think one of the biggest challenges right now is that there's a mistrust between law enforcement and the county attorney's office. I've been all the way out to the western suburbs. I've been all over this county, launched this campaign since September. And I've spoken to so many people who do such good work, but they're afraid to call the county attorney's office. They don't know if they're going to get an answer, and they don't know if they're going to get the right answer. So that's a problem. There are mayors and law enforcement officers who do not feel that they're heard. And so we need to open up those lines of communication again. I'm a firm believer that you don't build bridges in crisis. You do that beforehand. And I've been doing that already in Ramsey County for the better part of a decade. So we need to get that work going. We need to make sure that the bench that is a robust bench in Hennepin County isn't at odds with the county attorney's office and vice versa. And so we need to start doing that. And I would begin to do that, speaking with every partner, talking with every single person, so we can open up those pathways again. Because at the end of that are victims who need to be served. I think one other thing that we need to really start doing is looking at the way we look at juvenile crime. right? We can't necessarily pretend that we understand what is good for communities and think that we know better. I spoke to a gal out of North Minneapolis, Mothers Against Gun Violence, and one of the things that she said to me is how you don't get to decide for us what's best for us. You have to come speak to us. I saw the stop thing. I thought I had 30 more seconds. But you have to come and speak to us. Someone who gets murdered in North Minneapolis, a child, you can bet that there's going to be something about a probation, maybe kids' brains aren't developed, but then someone's murdered in Minnetonka or Edina, and you can bet there's going to be a prosecution and conviction. They want the same amount of justice. She does not want us to believe that we know what's best for her. So I would start to collaborate, communicate, and open up those pathways again.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. Mr. Pelican?
Yeah, absolutely. On Howe's last point, it's not the communities most impacted by violence that are taking the front lines on defunding the police. It's people who aren't on the front lines. And I think if you listen to the communities that are impacted by violence and instability in this community, many of them say we want cops here because they protect us, and it's their homes and families and businesses and schools that are impacted by under policing and a lack of enforcement and clearance rates. Public safety in this county is a bit of a mixed bag, I would say right now. I believe in data, and the data say that it is moving in the right direction, and we should take that seriously. But perceptions have not kept up with that. And so I think there are some real challenges that need to be addressed in public safety, including recidivism. You see it, unfortunately, with a subset of people who come into the system and are committing a huge number of crimes, including in carjackings and other areas. And I think unaddressed homelessness and unaddressed mental health and addiction issues are very serious. And I think those are one of the reasons that there's a perception of a lack of safety in downtown. And we have to take that very seriously. I don't think that abandoning our public spaces is a way to have a thriving community. And I don't think it's justice for the people who are living on our streets. It absolutely begins with building working relationships with law enforcement. One of the test cases is the moving violation policy that Hennepin County rolled out of not charging from minor traffic violations. It was done without any buy-in from law enforcement. They were blindsided, and it just eroded trust. And that is a textbook example. Even if there's merit to the policy, how works for an office that has successfully rolled that out in Ramsey County, John Choi. And that is a way to do it when you bring people together. And here it was just done knife and dagger to undercut trust. And it is an example of how you push people further apart and erode trust in public safety.
Thank you. Mr. Folk?
Thank you. I think the biggest challenge for the county is in short, how to do all these different things that need to be done for public safety with the limited resources that are available in that office. And it's the perennial challenge of any public office for sure, but certainly any public prosecution office. And then at the U.S. Attorney's Office, we would sit and think through kind of what do our priorities need to be so that we can have the most impact and increase public safety the most, knowing that we only have limited kind of resources to do all this really important work. And I think when I look forward post-election as county attorney, the things I know will be front of mind for the office, the things that would be most important. How do we deal with accountability for any federal agents who violated state law? The Preddy murder, the Good murder, the shooting of Julio Sosa Salas. How do those cases get prosecuted? We've never done this before in Minnesota. These are going to be hard cases. How do we balance that with the tens of thousands of cases that the county attorney's office will do over the next 4 years? We can't simply stop doing all the good work of the county to focus resources on other cases. We need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And so finding that right balance, I think, is going to be critical. So Operation Metro Surge, how do we address violent crime? Violent crime, homicides are down since the unprecedented spikes we saw during COVID, but they're actually up since 2019 and pre-COVID. And so we're still working on that issue, right? And so we need to ensure the county attorney's office is part of a coordinated response with law enforcement and all of our public safety partners to ensure we're driving that number back down. Juvenile crime is going to be critical. And when I think about juvenile crime and what the county attorney's office can do there, it is certainly to ensure compassion and getting kids back into the community when appropriate as quickly as possible, but we need to move and find more consequence to ensure that the kids who are truly providing a threat to our public safety are being handled in a way that gets them back home at the right time, but in the right way, which is to say rehabilitated and back to being productive members of their communities. And last but not least, relationships with all the public safety partners need to be repaired, and I'm committed to that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Folk. Mr. Frazier?
Thank you. I'll come back to that distrust piece because that's a big part of the reason why I'm running for this office. I think someone mentioned earlier, I think with Pelican mentioned about the idea that we don't want to go backwards. We do need to continue to go forward. And many of the conversations that I have when I'm in, regardless of what community I am, I live in the city of New Hope, and I represent the city of New Hope in Crystal as a state legislator. I can tell you a story going back a few years ago. She's retired now, former police chief. She wrote an open letter to Mike Freeman, just begging for communication. And I was embarrassed by that. I was the state representative at the time. I was embarrassed by the fact that we had to have our chief law enforcement officer in one of my cities ask the chief prosecutor just to communicate. And I remember when I was on Mary Moriarty's transition team for a few months and having those conversations with those chief officers with the Chiefs Association of Hennepin County. They said, you know, this is a start right here. Just the fact that you're coming out to me now to have this conversation to ask how can we be more communicative and collaborative is almost a gold standard from where we've been the last couple of decades. That's unacceptable. So we have to build that trust. We have to open up those pathways of back and forth to have that communication in order for all of our partners to be moving in the same direction to keep our community safe for everyone. And it doesn't matter if you're in the suburbs or if you're in North Minneapolis, it is the same issue. We have to have that communication. And then from the community's perspective, that distrust has been going on for a very long time. The premise of my campaign is building a system that works for everybody. That means we have to have a system that everyone can trust and everyone can have confidence in. And a perfect example, there was a press conference today from the feds coming in talking about fraud. Someone asked a question directly. Will Donald Trump give leniency to some of these individuals that are being prosecuted like he's done for some rich people when they've committed fraud? The answer to that was, I'll take the next question. That is why people distrust this system. I'm running to be a leader that will be able to answer that question and say, absolutely not. Whether you commit a crime on a corner block or a crime in a corner office, you will be held accountable and you'll have trust in the system and confidence that it works for you, not against you.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Ms. Krenz?
I think one of the big challenges is in the juvenile system. I've had an opportunity to review the diversion programs that Ms. Moriarty has started. And unlike Mr. Pelican, I think that there is an awful lot of wiggle room and multiple chances given to some of these juveniles. And I don't think that my viewpoint is going backward. This is going forward to make sure that the community is safe. You can't allow people who've committed murder to be on extended juvenile jurisdiction until they're only 21. You can't allow, make promises to victims and not fulfill those promises. You can't put people on extended juvenile jurisdiction and then not revoke them when they commit new crimes, because that does not give public safety. And I think an awful lot of the safety issues are coming from juveniles. And so I think that that's one of the things that really needs to be done. I mean, I totally agree with putting the relationship with law enforcement is very, very important. And that's certainly one of the things I would do, because I have worked with every single one of those police departments and some state agencies and federal agencies. So I know how to build those relationships because they know me, they know what my work is. I think that one of the things I would do in the office too is to recreate some of the specialty teams that would deal with some of the violent offenders and to deal also with repeat offenders, the career offender type of people.
Thank you very much. And before I turn back to Judge Cahill, for those of you who are listening at home, this has been submitted for CLE credit, and I have a code for you, which is 548261.
Do we get that?
See, you do, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna let them tell me no.
There, if you miss the sign up sheets on the way in and you want CLE credit, please make sure to sign your name on the sheet.
All right. I believe we're starting with Mr. Pelican on this one. For all of you, who is a prosecutor, either elected county attorney or an appointed U.S. attorney? And I'm looking for names, not generalities, whom you consider a leader worth emulating. Mr. Pelican.
It's a good question. I think I think of a few people that have characteristics I'd like to draw from. I think that Elliot Spitzer strikes me as someone who's courageous, ready to take on very powerful interests that came back with knives, and he has some very serious character flaws. I would say Mary Moriarty. I've been a harsh critic of hers at times when I think she deserves it. She brought charges against these ICE agents in this community, and I think that takes real courage. And I think we should praise and thank people when they make hard decisions that are right. I think that all of the people in the U.S. Attorney's Office who left recently due to pressure from Donald Trump and his completely corrupted Department of Justice show integrity as well. I think that it's important for us to lead with courage. And at this time, given the challenges facing our community, we need to know that it's not just ordinary people who are put into these positions of trust and power, but people who are ready to make hard choices that show their character when it counts.
Thank you. Mr. Fulton.
Thank you. So I'm going to give you a few names. First one is a deep cut. Thomas Dewey was the lead prosecutor in New York City and basically pioneered the use of racketeering laws back in the 1920s. And this guy was fearless. He took down the mob, he took down racketeering, and he changed New York as we know it. And it's a deep cut, but it's one of those people in history who I think changed the way we view the role of a prosecutor and showed the public what a prosecutor who stands up for what's right without fear or favor can do to benefit a community. And he did that. So Thomas Dewey's one. Janet Reno is another one who I've always looked up to, and it's not for anything flashy she did. She was like the opposite of Thomas Dewey in terms of persona and approach, but she was rock solid, man. If you wanted somebody who would just give it to you straight and didn't want to be the front face of the administration, she was just there to do the job of a lawyer and be that steady, steely-eyed kind of killer. That was her, and I love her for that. I think that really is the best thing any prosecutor can do, is just execute on the mission and kind of stay out of the headlines. And I think she should be held up for that. She was wonderful. Preet Bharara in New York, again, what a brilliant kind of cerebral guy who, again, took on some of the hardest cases and did them in the Southern District of New York, which is a place that brings kind of world-changing cases. I love him. He wrote a great book. I highly recommend if you haven't read it. And then last, this is really personal. It's a friend of mine. His name's Chris Wilton, and he's a judge now, and he taught me how to do the hard work. And he taught me how to stand with the victims on their worst day. And he taught me how to lose with dignity and win with nothing but humility. And he's still on the bench. He'll be mad I'm saying this about him. But guys like Chris taught me how to be an ethical, hardworking, do it for the right reasons prosecutor. And he's made me a better lawyer and frankly, just a better person.
Mr. Frazier.
Thank you. This is an easy one for me. Attorney General Keith Ellison. The work that he's done, and Keith and I go back a long way. The work that he's done, the trajectory of his career, and similar to mine, having these very diverse experiences, having a perspective that is informed by multiple different perspectives and practices of law. It guides me. But the work that he did, I say this today because the work that he did in assembling a team to prosecute Derek Chauvin after the murder of George Floyd was critical. It was critical in terms of what it meant for the communities that were impacted, that for decades had never seen accountability when it was a law enforcement officer that has taken one of their loved ones, or their community members, one of their neighbors. And he did the hard work. He got in there, he assembled that team. And then this leads me to the chief prosecutor on that team was Judge Jerry Blackwell. He volunteered for that, unpaid. He stepped up when the community needed him. He understood that, and he did the hard work, and he got the conviction on that case. And to all the prosecutors that worked on that team, because I know there were more than just Keith and Jerry Blackwell. To all of them, I look up to them, and I appreciate them for the work that they've done on that. And I circle back to the present day. After Renee Good was killed, I was out in the community with plenty of community members. And the sense that I got was we were very close to being exactly where we were to after George Floyd was murdered. The community wanted someone to speak up. They wanted to know there was going to be accountability. And Attorney General Ellison, along with Mary Moriarty and the County Attorney's Office, they came out and they said, we are going to pursue these cases. We're going to preserve the evidence, and we're going to seek accountability for this community. If they had not have done that, I'm afraid of what may have happened if they didn't step up to do that. And that is the way I want to lead. The community is going to know, again, you can trust in the system. It'll be working for you, not against you.
Ms. Krantz.
Well, I'm going to be very inside baseball because I really don't pay attention to the elected officials because I've worked for 4 of them, and I wouldn't pick any one of them as someone to, frankly. I can tell you though, the people within the office who really impacted me, there was a man by the name of Mike Walls. He was one of the, I'm going to get teary because he's passed away. He was one of the best supervisors I ever had in my life. And this is a guy who I like to pick up little tiny things that people say and apply them. And one of the things he would say was, just because you can doesn't mean you should, type of thing. And he was one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And he very much influenced my philosophy. He also was a person that if you made a mistake, so I had a park police officer, I know somebody might recognize the name, Jim Dale, who got mad at me because I didn't charge a juvenile case. And I had a fight with him on the phone. He called Mike Walls and said, what's your problem with this new young prosecutor? Who does she think she is? And he stood up for me. And I always remembered that. And those were the people that I really appreciated, were any of my supervisors who stood up for me. He was definitely one of them. And then I have to give an honorable mention to Judith Hawley. Despite some faults she might have, she was always an incredibly supportive person and probably the best trial lawyer that Hennepin County had for years. And she very much influenced what I did as a prosecutor.
Mr. Nguyen.
My first answer is John Choi, Ramsey County Attorney John Choi. I have had the great privilege of sitting at a table with him and doing great work with him in a steady, slow, collaborative manner for a better part of a decade. He has started programs like the non-fatal shootings, treating failed murders, right? Essentially shootings and things like that as if they were completed murders. We've been able to do that work with collaboration from law enforcement, getting essentially a solve rate of 71% in 2025, up from 37% in 2024. That means 183 shootings to 73 shootings now. It's just wonderful work. In terms of shots fired, 55% down. He's also done a lot of great work in terms of reimagining youth justice. That's where we build a CRT program, so community review team, where we invite public defenders to the table. We invite community to the table. We invite the child that committed the harm and the victim that committed the harm. And we all talk about what a good plan is moving forward. And that work that we've done has been a nationwide model and has done great work. And I'm really proud of that. So we take care of our youth. He's also started work called Start by Believing, which I've had, which is essentially we believe women when they say they are raped and assaulted. And we take those very hard cases to court, not just based on criminal convictions and data in terms of like conviction numbers. We take them when a victim tells us this has happened to her, and we make sure we ensure that those people are held accountable and the victim's voices are upheld. Also, carjacking and auto theft. when carjackings and auto thefts were rampant in Ramsey County and actually in Hennepin as well, we collaborated with law enforcement in working to build what we called a CAT team, essentially focusing on carjackings, auto thefts from juveniles. And we were able to get it down to 39% decline rate, which is fantastic work. It was nationwide decline rate in the entire country. Another thing that we worked on was the non-pretextual traffic stop. And I'm proud to say that that also has reduced disproportionate minority contact. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. This next question will start with Mr. Folk. What is your opinion about the prosecution of ICE or other federal agents who commit felonies in the course of their duties? And should the Hennepin County Attorney's Office have a role in that?
The very short answer to your question is yes, the Hennepin County Attorney's Office should have a role in that. I mean, accountability is essential in ensuring the rule of law. And for me, this is very personal. This has impacted my family, and I know everybody in Hennepin County has been deeply impacted by what happened during Operation Metro Surge. And whether it's seeing masked agents descend on the streets, whether it's watching Minnesotans get killed, whether it's hearing about children unable to breathe because they're enveloped in a cloud of chemical irritant, whether it's watching Minnesotans be held down and having chemical irritant sprayed in their face. In a normal world, which to be clear, we are not in, the Department of Justice would be doing something about this. They would have opened civil rights cases, they would be investigating, and they would be prosecuting when a crime has been committed, and we're not there. And so it is going to be the role of the county attorney's office to step in and do this work. And I think, to be clear, we have never done this before in Minnesota. This is a first time for us. There is really no precedent to guide us here. And so it is essential we do this right. And doing it right means doing it the right way and doing it in a way that will hold up as we move into federal court. Because folks, these cases are not going to stay in state court. They are going to be removed to federal court. They're going to be litigated in federal court. It is going to be essential that we have federal court subject matter experts leading the county attorney's office charge on these cases. It's critical. The county attorney's office is working currently with the AG, and I think that's a great job for them to be working together. It's good to see that collaboration, but these cases are going to require years-long effort. They're going to end up in federal court, and there's going to have to be a huge amount of litigation to get them through that federal court process. And I am not just committed to it, but I think I bring a unique experience among this panel of candidates in terms of my deep federal experience prosecuting, defending both civilly and criminally cases. And I'm excited at the opportunity with the kind of complete understanding that we're going to have to do that while we're also doing everything else the county attorney's office has to do so well every day.
Thank you, Mr. Folk. Mr. Frazier.
Yes, short answer is yes also. And I committed to that very early on. Again, I was out there literally maybe a couple hours after Ms. Good was killed, talking with the community members, hearing from them directly about what they wanted to see and what they would demand from leaders from our state, but also from the county attorneys that could prosecute this case. And I committed early saying, yep, absolutely. I will pursue justice. I will pursue accountability in this case. And what I gathered from that is that we cannot actually heal until we pursue that accountability and get that accountability. And I'm committed. I'm all in. We'll commit the resources we need to do. Absolutely thinking about the other work that needs to be done in that office. And I think about that often as someone who's the chair of our Ways and Means Committee and looking at budgets for the entire state. I understand what's coming down from the federal level that's going to cause us some budget constraints. But this is the work. This is the important work that needs to be done, and we'll figure out a way to get that done. I am very hopeful with the collaboration between the AG's office. Again, I mentioned this earlier. I think that's important. And I think this is how you lead, because this is what the community is asking for. This is what the state is asking for. In Minnesota, we have a spotlight on us, much like we did when George Floyd was murdered. And how do we address those issues and move forward? We have a spotlight now on us and how to show the rest of the country how to pursue these cases and how to hold the federal government accountable when they descend on your community, occupy your community, and kill your neighbors in broad daylight and violate constitutional rights. There are many cases that are going to come up. Most of these cases are going to come up under the next administration. That's why it's very important who sits in this seat. And again, I'm a fighter, always been one. I've been in office when Trump has been in office before. I will continue to push back. I will continue to fight, and I will lead the office to pursue accountability for those individuals that were harmed while those agents were here.
Thank you very much. Ms. Krenz?
Thank you. Well, My viewpoint is that anyone who commits a crime, whether it's an ICE agent, a federal agent, a police officer, a person on the street, they all deserve to be charged and prosecuted if I believe the evidence can prove beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury that that person is guilty. And what I will say is, I'm sure all of us were contacted by the same spokesman, recorder, person who wanted to know what our opinions about this would be. And I'll tell you what I told him. I am not, if I'm elected, I would look at those cases and I would look at the evidence and I would make sure they could be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. If they can't, I would take the appropriate action, which may mean dismissing them. If they can be proven, I would go ahead with it. I would make no blanket promise as to what I'm going to do with those because ethically, I don't think any of us can if we don't know what the evidence is. No prosecutor should be giving an opinion about something that they don't have the evidence and have not seen that evidence. Regarding the collaboration with the Attorney General's office, which was another question that the spokesman reporter asked about, I don't know what that collaboration is. I know that the attorneys in the Hennepin County Attorney's Office are the best in the state, that they are used to doing these cases. We have people who are expert in police involved shooting and police involved crimes. And so if there was something that the AG's office can give, that's great. If not, I would have to review what the agreement is. So just like anybody else, for full transparency, I would prosecute those cases where there's been a crime that's committed that can be proven.
Thank you. Mr. Wen?
The answer for me is yes. I'm a refugee. I'm an immigrant. I live in Regina and Powderhorn area. Renee Good was killed in my neighborhood. During the ICE surge, I was afraid for my life and my kids' lives. We had a very white mother drive them around and very white grandmother who drove from Milwaukee to here to make sure they got to school. My mom, their grandmother couldn't. I couldn't do the normal things that I needed to do. Just getting to work, I was afraid of getting pulled over by ICE and being murdered and killed. So for me, it's a very real thing. I'm also a person who's naturalized and sworn allegiance to this country under the Declaration of Independence, and I was a police officer who wore the badge to make sure that all constitutional rights are safeguarded. So for me, it is a very personal thing at the molecular nuclear level. I'm also an expert, I would say, in officer-involved shootings. For the last 10 years or so, I handle all of the officer-involved shooting analysis in Ramsey County. That means any single time a police officer in Ramsey County kills someone or uses deadly force, the BCA does the investigation and brings it to me, and I pour over hundreds and thousands of hours of data and evidence to make sure that we do the appropriate thing to charge or not to charge. Right? I'm so proud that Minnesota, in terms of Ramsey County, we were the first ones to bring officers to account for Philando Castile with regard to Officer Yanes. That's a big, important case. I'm so proud that right now, as we sit here, I announced the investigation into the federal officers that took that Hmong gentleman, a U.S. citizen, out in the middle of the winter in his underwear, in the cold, falsely imprisoned him and kidnapped him, et cetera, et cetera. It's an ongoing case, and that's all I can say publicly, but we are doing it right now as we speak. So for me, I have the experience, I have the expertise, and I know how to do it. And I will continue to do that work. I also went and got myself sworn into federal court because I know, as well as everybody else in this room, we'll be moving up that way. But we'll be prosecuting state law to which I have prosecuted and investigated my entire career. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pelican?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. I think accountability is essential. And we heard respectfully disagree with Mr. Folk, who said these are unprecedented, but they are very rare that there is a state prosecution of a federal agent. And this is something I've been working on directly in my new role and my private practice. And I'll tell you this, there are only 4 cases in the history of supremacy clause litigation that have been allowed to proceed past dispositive motion briefing. 4. Almost every other state prosecution of a federal agent who was conceivably acting within their duty has been dismissed under federal immunity. So it's very rare but there is a path. And that's also something that I will respectfully add to what's been said is these aren't really officer involved shootings. These are federal agent involved shootings. And there's a whole different body of law and body of challenges that are going to come into play in those prosecutions. First is moving into federal court, as has been mentioned. Second is the supremacy clause immunity, which is going to be the big hurdle. There are arguments on that front. And the third is the evidence. This isn't the case where the prosecutor can just call the BCA and get the evidence like in a standard officer involved shooting. There's currently litigation right now, state of Minnesota and Hennepin County in federal court to force the Trump administration to hand over evidence. So there are going to be a lot of issues involved here. It's going to be very complicated, but it's 100% worth doing. And the last thing I'll say is I am not going to have any patience for the excuse of we shouldn't move forward because the Roberts Supreme Court might take it away, or Trump wouldn't give us the evidence. Minnesotans deserve accountability. I'm out of time, and we have to move forward on any case where we believe a crime was committed here.
Thank you. And since I heard each of you say yes to that question, I'm going to ask a 1-minute follow-up question, and I'll start with you, Mr. Frazier. Obviously, there are some barriers to moving forward in terms of resources and expertise and access to evidence. Could you please take 1 minute and tell us how you will manage those limitations to handle all of those prosecutions?
Yeah, similar to what I said before, when Attorney General Ellison assembled a team to prosecute Derek Chauvin, many of those were volunteers. They volunteered their time because they believe in this country, they believe in the rule of law, they believe in protecting constitutional rights, and they did that. I would seek to engage folks that have the subject matter expertise in federal court, albeit we're doing state law, but it is federal court. And I understand it because I've been in federal court. I will seek out individuals like that want to give their time to represent and see these cases moving through to deal with the limitations we may have with the budgets, because I know that is coming as well, again, from my experience helping with budgets at the state level.
Thank you very much. Ms. Krenz?
Well, since $750,000 of the county attorney's office money was wasted to tell Ms. Moriarty that Trooper Londergan couldn't be prosecuted, we don't have the money to do that, so I'd hire Anders to take care of it. We got
Yeah.
Thank you for that efficient response. Mr. Wen.
That's funny. I'll hire everybody on the panel. No, for us right now, seriously, because we have announced the investigation of those federal officers against the federal officers against the people who took Chung Lee Scott Tao out. We just didn't wake up overnight and say we're going to do this. We researched, we planned, we collaborated with local law enforcement. We also initiated collaboration with our chief judge to make sure that we have a grand jury that will carry this forward. We also made sure that myself and other people on our team are going to be federally sworn and capable. We've also reached out to other researchers, right, and other federal practicing attorneys across the nation to see what they're doing. We've also reached out across the river to Hennepin County because we understand that very similar litigation that's going to happen in Hennepin is absolutely going to happen in our case. And I would say that I'm so proud that out of the 87 counties, Ramsey County right now and Hennepin are standing up and showing what leadership really, really means.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Pelican?
Yeah, I think we've been talking about the role of the AG's office, as Hal was just mentioning. You have a number of counties working on this. You have people in the AG's office. There are a lot of there's coordination, and there are a lot of resources available. I also, I think I've heard this on the campaign trail when people say it's not worth the scarce resources to go do this. I think that's wrong. I think that there are options, including the Attorney General's office, and as Cedric mentioned, there's a model of bringing in volunteer special counsel to do this. And I will tell you, because I'm working directly in this space now, anyone who tells you that our hands are tied, we don't have the resources to do it is full of crap. There are dozens of extremely talented lawyers from around the country who would line up for the opportunity to do this work for free. So it is only going to be a lack of will if we hear there isn't a way to do this. But again, to the management question, I'm not going to sit here right now and say what the solution is, because it would begin with meeting with the people in the office who are working on it, hearing from them, and figuring out the resources we need.
Thank you. Mr. Folk?
Yeah. So to get the right result here, which is accountability and well done investigations and prosecutions, I think it's critical to bring in federal expertise. And so I'm going to create a federal prosecution task force. And that federal prosecution task force is going to be made up of subject matter experts from inside the county attorney's office who are doing the work right now. And I'm going to bring in my former colleagues from the Department of Justice who are both civil rights and federal prosecution experts, because I think that kind of hybrid model will maximize our opportunity to do these the right way. And for the folks coming in from outside, I think they're going to have to come in pro bono. But I also think that, as was mentioned earlier, Attorney General Ellison has set the model for this, and it's a great model. We bring in great lawyers from outside who are dedicated to the mission, and they'll help. So we're going to create a federal prosecution task force. We're going to bring in those subject matter experts. And then I am committed to working with the Attorney General's office to ensure, again, that we're bringing every state resource we have to bear on solving this problem.
Thank you very much. Judge Cahill?
Thank you. How will your administration and policies differ from the current administration? I believe we're at Ms. Krenz.
Well, I answered this question with the Western Hennepin County mayors. I don't think there's a policy that of Ms. Moriarty's that I would keep. I think that a lot of them need to be changed. The only one that I gave any kudos to was wage theft, because I think that some of the wage theft policies are pretty good, but I would immediately end the suburban police officer cases not being charged out of traffic stops. The Hennepin County Sheriff's just posted recently about a huge amount of money and drugs that they got on a traffic stop for was it a stop sign violation or something like that? My policies would be much more common sense, where people we're going to hold defendants accountable. We are going to make sure that victims are informed of what's happening on their cases and do it before they walk into the courtroom and are surprised by a negotiation on a homicide case. And we are going to work with the police and not try to hide policies from them because we're scared that it'll get leaked to the public before things can be done. So I would change probably every policy that is currently in place. A lot of these aren't written down as they're supposed to be by statute. So I'd have to suss out what some of those are because they're hidden. But anything that's in writing, I would evaluate and probably get rid of.
Mr. Nguyen.
First and foremost, I would leave my ego at the door. We need to make sure that the county attorney's office is an office that collaborates, listens, cares, and seeks justice. I think that's been one of the largest problems with the current administration. And the people that I promote and the people that I have next to me, to the left, to the right of me, are people who will lead without ego, period. We need to make sure, and I've touched on this already, that we reach out beyond Minneapolis. Hennepin County is more than Minneapolis. We have to reach out to every single mayor, every single resident, all law enforcement. We need to make sure that we work with our unions and trades, and we need to make sure that we take care of wage theft and the people that are exploited at the wage theft level as well, so we can have actual fair living wages. That's what I'll be focusing on. We need to make sure that we understand what mental illness is, and we have safe places for people to go and also not be victimized out there and cause harm to other folks. I have a brother who lives with severe and persistent mental illness with schizophrenia. I understand what that feels like. We need to make sure that our people who are legally here, who add to this economy, are able to go to schools, churches, and work. I'm a person who fully understands what that means. And we need to rebuild that trust. In terms of work inside the office, there are very capable people that are there, but we are a lack of resources for them because we have invested, the current administration has invested too much money outside of the office. We have to make sure that Hennepin County becomes once again the premier law office in the state. Retaining talent, diversifying talent, and promoting those who are going to make sure that the trains keep moving. We're going to make sure that we keep those who want to remain safe in our communities, safe, and also make the hard decisions of prosecuting. A prosecutor's office does need to prosecute. Thank you.
Mr. Pelican.
Yeah, I agree with that. If the Hennepin County Attorney's Office is not going to stand up and protect the people of Hennepin County, no one else will. So we have to have an office that takes this role of protecting us from the people who want to harm the people of this county very seriously. Specific changes, I would view law enforcement as a partner. If elected, before being sworn in, my goal would be to meet with the head of every law enforcement agency operating in Hennepin County and have an open door with them. We have to get real about partnering with cops, and I think it's an honorable line of work, and they are our partners in keeping Hennepin County safe. I would get real about repeat offenders. I've mentioned diversion. I think there are some real successes there, but diversion should be about a second chance, not a third, fourth, fifth, sixth chance, and it shouldn't apply to the most serious crimes. And that's true even for youth. Beyond law enforcement, I would be a consensus builder. I think sometimes there's a little mission creep when we talk about that office. The office isn't the supreme law enforcement office of the county. There are a lot of independent agencies and people involved, but one of the failures has been picking fights with our own governor. She called Tim Walz a homophobe. They just cannot build an effective coalition for criminal justice reform when you don't have the governor and attorney general of your own party at the table. So you have to be a consensus builder. I would get real about mental health and drug addiction. I have a lot of compassion for people, but I think there is a contingent in the progressive community now that thinks intervention is too harsh. And I don't believe it is justice to turn our backs on these people and let them just live in squalor on the street. And I don't think it's right for all of the people in this community who are trying to live and work and go to school here. And I would get real about victim support and really making sure that the people who are victims of crimes understand the decisions and have an open channel to the office.
Mr. Polk. Thank you. I think there are going to be some fundamental differences in terms of how I approach leadership, collaboration, decision-making, and policy-making in the county attorney's office if I'm lucky enough to be elected as county attorney. I think a good county attorney's office, first of all, is one that is a collaborative, no ego, very much team-oriented office. And what we've seen for the last 4 years is an office that is not working as well as it should with its law enforcement partners, with its community partners, with members of the judiciary, probation. And I think that needs to change. And so first thing I will be focused on is bringing back that collaborative approach to public safety decision-making and policy-making at the county attorney's office. The county attorney needs to lead with humility and grace, but also with a clear vision. And so that's one issue. Two, I think the county attorney's office needs to be focused like a laser on using its resources to be very strategic about its enforcement work. And what that means is isolating the folks who are creating public safety issues and focus your resources on them. Our research shows us that when we look at who's committing crimes, it's a really small number of people that are really those having the worst impacts on our public safety. So we need to focus on them, and we need to be open about that and clear about that. And then finally, my approach to prevention and intervention, which is to say keeping folks out of the criminal justice system, that's a huge priority for me. And I want to invest more time and resources into that. These are all things that I did at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And in my experience at the U.S. Attorney's Office, we did our best work when we worked in collaboration, when we were setting these different strategic initiatives, whether it was with our tribal partners, whether it was with our partners in North Minneapolis, South Minneapolis, whether it was our law enforcement partners. You get the best outcomes when you drive policy based on input from all these diverse stakeholders. And I'm committed to doing that work as the county attorney. And I think if there's one example we can look to where that system just has failed currently, it's how the county attorney rolled out its traffic stop policy. When days after the policy is rolled out, law enforcement is saying, we learned about this at a press conference. That's going to change. Mr. Frazier.
Thank you. I just want to shout out to Hal for saying that Minneapolis isn't the only thing in Hennepin County, because I don't live in Minneapolis. But I appreciate that. And I talk about it often because I'm the only one that's not from Minneapolis here. And I think that perspective is important because Hennepin County is a big county. And I plan on going all around this county, connecting with folks to make sure that they know that everybody's going to be included in the conversation. Everybody's going to be a part of the decisions and how we solve things in this county. The only other thing about, there are some things that need to be kept. There is a extreme risk protection or liaison in that office. That's important. That is our version of the red flag laws. I carried that legislation. It is saving lives. We've looked at the petitions that have been submitted. We've got individuals that were threatening to shoot up large events, threatening to get into officer-involved shootings, to committing suicide by officer. We've saved lives with that. We need to make sure that stays there because they're doing great work connecting with community members and letting them know that that process is there for their protection. Conviction integrity, that needs to stay. We've had 2 people exonerated. In fact, I had to, through my Ways and Means Committee as the chair, we moved the bill through one of the largest claims payment that we've had in state history. Over $4 million was paid to, and most of that, a majority of that, over 90% that was paid to one individual because he lost 20 years of his life being wrongly convicted and incarcerated. We need to make sure, again, this is a situation where the system is saying, look, we've made a mistake. We got it wrong. We're trying to rectify that and make you whole. We can't give those people that are locked that time back, but we can absolutely show the community and them that when the system makes a mistake, we will rectify that. And that builds to trust and confidence in the system, therefore leading to better outcomes in safer communities. And I am the only labor endorsed candidate. Wage theft is a big issue for me. I worked with labor to create a wage theft subpoena so that we can bring those cases, gather that evidence and prosecute those cases more effectively. And I will make sure that I continue those relationships with everyone to move the work forward in Hennepin County, making it better for everybody.
Thank you. This is going to be a 1-minute question and answer because it's pretty straightforward. Everyone on the panel has talked about trust and relationships and collaboration. What are your thoughts about rejoining the Hennepin, or for Hennepin County to rejoin the Minnesota County Attorneys Association? Let's see. Mr. Wynn.
So I sit on the Violent Crime Coordinating Council that has police chiefs from all across the state, as well as the ATF, FBI, and everybody else. Ramsey County is present. I go to the meeting every single month at the BCA. Hennepin County is not there, and that's a problem. We need to be there. And if I become the Hennepin County Attorney, we'll be there. I am on the Minnesota County Attorney's Law Committee and other committees. Hennepin County is not there. Hennepin County needs to be there. We cannot have such a big resource for the entire county and for the voice of Minnesota not at the table. So they need to be there. Hennepin County pulled out of the Minnesota County Attorneys Association, essentially taking the voice of the entire county away from the table where they can make decisions and help shape the policies that affect the victims of crime in Hennepin County. We just cannot have that absence, and that absence is gone because of ego.
Mr. Pelican.
Yeah, short answer is yes, I would rejoin it. I think it was just done out of petulance and ego, and it's just a shame. And I think it's a huge loss for the state. I think it's a loss for Hennepin County to not, be involved in those conversations. I'm going to use the rest of my time to go back to a few other differences that I didn't have time to mention that I would institute. Number one, or the next is getting rid of the race policy. She put into place this ridiculous thing that says they take race into account in charging decisions, which I think offends the very, most basic tenets of our democracy and has landed her in an actual DOJ civil rights investigation, which is preposterous. So get rid of that policy. And then it goes to rejoining the County Attorney Association, which is management in that office. Diane mentioned a lack of written policies. She threw out Mike Freeman's written charging guidelines. Even if you disagree with them, people work in that office and the public need to know what the consistency and the guidelines are. And there has to be a resumption of a tiered structure in managing that office and treating people with respect.
Look, in my experience, good attorneys in general, but certainly good prosecutors, are hungry to learn from wherever they can. And that hunger, one way you learn is by working with your colleagues across the state. And as a federal prosecutor, I always felt like I learned so much from my colleagues in other districts. And to bring it home to Minnesota, one of the things I love most about leading the U.S. Attorney's Office was sitting down with colleagues from across the state in different law enforcement agencies, different prosecution agencies, sitting down with my colleagues in the Federal Defender's Office who were defending cases, sitting down with judges, probation officers, tribal partners, getting all these different perspectives, because that made me a better decision maker and a better prosecutor and frankly, a more humble leader. And I think to cut that off is a real mistake. And so to answer the question, yeah, we're going to rejoin, but we're not just going to rejoin. We're actually going to bring to bear the resources of the largest public law office in the state and help lead that organization, because I think they want Hennepin County back at the table, and the county should be a leader in that space. Mr. Frazier.
Yeah, I when I heard about this, I put out a public statement right away saying that I've had a great relationship with with MCAA. I work with them. I've worked with them the entire time that I've been a state legislator. We worked on many bill proposals and legislation that we've got across the finish line, got into law. IRFO is one of those laws as well. So I'm absolutely committed to re-engaging with MCAA. And to the point that Andres made, yes, it is when you have the opportunity to connect with other lawyers and get information and feedback, we have better outcomes on the cases that we work on. And I know that from firsthand. I'm a labor attorney. I have access to every labor attorney in every state around this country who I can reach out to when there's an issue that I'm looking at, and figure out the different multiple angles I can take to address that issue and be successful for my client. So I think it's vitally important. And Hennepin County puts a huge share of resources into MCAA. So that's one thing I know they're going to be missing. I'm looking to re-engage in that conversation with them and work with them.
Ms. Krebs.
Of course I would. I mean, it's just that simple. One of the big issues is after the $750,000 got paid out to the outside law firm, we didn't have money left for training. And one of the issues with pulling out of MCAA was the attorneys who go to the annual meeting, CLE conference couldn't go. And it was so bad that the Anoka County attorney created scholarships for Hennepin County attorneys to go to that. And I think it was 8 people got to go because Brad Johnson said it needed to be done. But of course, we are the leader. We do a lot of training with them. I would let people train who are supposed to be there, and not be retaliatory toward people who are supposed to be teaching at MCAA as well.
All right. Thank you. And this next question will be starting with Mr. Pelican. Fraud involving government funds is all over the news. Is this an issue in Hennepin County, and does the Hennepin County Attorney's Office have a role in dealing with it? If so, what is your plan? And if it requires resources, how will you manage those resources?
I was in this room a few months ago and for a DFL lawyers event, and there were some pretty heated questions to the state chair on the fraud question. And I think for a long time, some people in our party viewed the fraud criticism as just a bad faith right-wing attack. And I think that was such an error that it has caused this huge black eye for Democrats, but also for this idea that government should be involved in helping people. And I think as someone personally who believes it, and as a member of a party that is the one saying, give us some resources and we can go out and help people, and we can do it more effectively than just letting the private sector do it. But we need your tax dollars to do it. That's a big ask. We should be the ones who are most angry when that trust is abused. We should be the ones on the front line saying we are the party that is going to make government efficient. We're going to make sure that it's accountable, and we are going to do everything we can so that when we ask you for your money so that we can go out and spend it, you can trust us. And I think it was a huge failure that we let that slide and depended on Donald Trump, one of the biggest fraudsters in the history of this country, to come in and somehow get the moral high ground on this issue. So to the specific question, yes, the county attorney should address it. I think it was a huge mistake. There's a fraudulent daycare running out of my condo building. I mean, it's so obvious. And we just couldn't see past this idea that it was a bad faith attack. So absolutely, I would reinvigorate the use of the office in that area and do everything possible to hold fraudsters accountable.
Thank you. Mr. Polk?
Yeah, so I mean, look, fraud and white collar crime is one of the kind of core components of any office that's doing prosecutions. Economic crimes are part of how we make our community safer. And we're very focused right now on feeding our futures and the autism indictments announced today and everything else. And those are important cases, and I'm glad they're being brought, and everybody should be concerned when public money is being stolen by fraudsters to finance a lavish lifestyle. It's wrong, and we have to investigate it. We have to charge it. We have to hold those folks accountable. When I think of fraud, though, in the context of our Hennepin County Attorney's Office or any county attorney's office, I think we also need to be focusing on how are we protecting the most vulnerable members of our community. And I think a good county attorney's office is focused on that issue. How do we protect our vulnerable community members from fraud? And, recently I defended a woman who, senior citizen, she started out as a victim of one of these online romance fraud schemes. She ended up getting dragged in as a perpetrator. It was an absolutely heartbreaking story. She bankrupted herself, nearly lost her family farmstead. It was devastating. And those are the kinds of cases that I think we need to also remember are part of this fraud conversation. Your parents, your grandparents are going to be targeted by people on the internet, people on social media who have no conscience and probably aren't here and are going to do everything in their power to rob them blind. And somebody has to hold them accountable. And it's going to need to be the county attorney's office, and hopefully a county attorney's office working in conjunction with our AG's office and with our Department of Justice. That is absolutely a priority for the county attorney. I think my plan for doing that is to bring more resources to bear on that. I've talked to folks who are in that economic crimes that economic crimes unit in the county attorney's office right now. And my sense is they need support. So I think we're going to have to look at how we can move some more resources internally to better resource them so that the county attorney's office can be engaged in this space, protecting, again, whether it's the elderly, whether it's youth, whatever communities are being preyed upon, we need to focus on it. And short answer is, yeah, it's an issue.
Thank you. Mr. Frazier?
Thank you. Yeah, look, as a kid, I grew up on the South Side of Chicago, poor working class community. Many of those safety net resources that are being fraudulently accessed, those are the resources that I depended on to grow up, to live, to sustain, to eat, to have housing. Whenever we have fraud happening in those situations and that money's being taken away, that means folks like the little kid that I was, family, and my family, we're not getting those resources. It was vitally important that we make sure we go after individuals that are doing that, hold them accountable, and get that money back. That's the big part to me. Get that money back so that those resources can go to where they need to go. And we happy this year in the legislature we created the Office of Inspector General. It's an independent office that will be focused on going after fraud. And it took us a while. We had to focus on to make sure we got that right. And we have to resource that office as well. So that is an office that the county attorney's office will be able to work with to pursue these fraudulent cases. So I'm happy that is there in place. But yes, the county attorney office plays a role because many of those cases are likely going to be seen. Again, we're going to be on the front lines looking at those cases. We're going to see those cases first. And it's great now that we're going to have some resources that we can offices we can collaborate with to make sure we hold those individuals accountable, make sure we're getting restitution, getting that money back, and make sure it's going directly exactly to where it's supposed to go, to some of our most vulnerable populations, to make sure they sustained. When we can keep those communities stable, we have safer communities.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Ms. Grins?
Well, as I said, for the last 18 months of my years in the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, I ran the white collar crime team. At that time, we had 2 investigators and we had about 5 attorneys. What's happened in the current administration is that has been ruined. That team has been ruined almost completely, and people have left because of being unhappy with the situation within the office. And so I would revitalize that. That team used to be, we were essentially the U.S. Attorney's Office of the state. We took cases from all over. One of the cases that we took was a RICO case of a whole bunch of burglaries of pull tabs throughout the entire state. And we put together a RICO case on that. So we have the ability to do that. We need to have an extra investigator because we only have one. And to Anders' point, one of the things that we do on that team is to prosecute financial exploitation of vulnerable adults. So that team already works with Adult Protective Services in making cases. There was a case recently, Lou Regoose did a story about an adult guy who was adopted by an older man and he swindled him out of the money. We actually advised the police officers who did that case. So we also can work with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Historically, it has never been a good relationship. However, there are a lot of those cases that are going there that we could take in the Hennepin County Attorney's Office and have in the past a lot of grant fraud and a lot of that kind of stuff. And so with a revitalized team, and I'll tell you, this white collar crime is what I love. It was great. That needs to be reinstituted, and that's one of the first things I would do.
Thank you. Mr. Wen.
The answer is yes. Hennepin County does have a role. When we talk about white collar crime and fraud, in Ramsey County, we noticed that we had an issue with regard to wage theft. We had an issue with regard to senior and exploitation. Wow, I can't talk for a second.
It's okay.
But we had those issues, and the Ramsey County Attorney John Choi told me, "Hey, what are we going to do with this?" So what we did was we shifted a series of specialized attorneys who were doing complicated murder cases, everything else, and we took them away from that work and we built a fraud unit. Then we collaborated with law enforcement and St. Paul Police Department, as well as the BCA and other units, and we asked for investigators. One of them was actually embedded within our office. Now I supervise that complete unit, and we're all within 10 feet of each other in the office. We cannot not run into each other. So all the time we are collaborating. All the time we're looking over warrants and approving paperwork and making sure we're following up on that loose end, on this end, and that end. And I'm really proud to say that we stepped up and we announced wage theft prosecution for McDonald Homes, this big roofing company that was basically taking $1.5 million in terms of publicly traded funds for this contract. And we held them accountable. It was a mother, father, and son outfit that did that, and we're holding them accountable. We've recently just also announced the prosecution of a subcontractor that was affiliated with them. So yes, we know how to do that. And these are specialized cases, sometimes hundreds to thousands of exhibits. They take weeks, if not months, to try. So they're very complicated, and I'm proud that we're doing that, and I know how to do that. When we talk about elder abuse, though, and when we talk about fraud, I also want to make sure that we do not forget our seniors. So I also made sure that we took our elder abuse in terms of physical abuse, and we coupled that with our white collar unit. And another thing about fraud, I want to talk to our Somali community. Right? There are some folks who are doing just fantastic work, doing fantastic businesses that are sound and legit. And some of the crimes that they've suffered, their school buses being burned, and then the hate mail and the voicemails, that's inappropriate. And we will think about that and address that as well.
Thank you. All right, thank you to all the candidates. Very thoughtful answers, and we're going to go into the closing statements. To make sure that we end on time, we will limit it to 2 minutes. So, Mr. Bullock, I think you are next on the rotation. So you give us your 2 minutes.
We'll end where we began. Thanks again for being here tonight. Thanks to our wonderful moderators and to the American Constitution Society and Dorsey and Whitney for hosting, and to all the candidates. It's been really awesome to be part of this productive conversation. Thank you all for coming, and for everybody who's online. The role of the county attorney is a significant one. The county attorney's office, as we've talked about, is the largest public law office in Minnesota, and it plays a critical role in ensuring our public safety. I've spent my entire career doing criminal justice work as a Marine lawyer in the juvenile division at the county attorney's office, as a federal prosecutor, as a leader in the federal prosecutor's office, and doing defense work. And I know the challenges that lie ahead for our next county attorney. I also know the opportunities that exist for our next county attorney, and that's what excites me most about this job. A county attorney must have, I think, a firm and absolute commitment to the rule of law, and that commitment means equal accountability for all, whether you're a violent offender, a white-collar criminal, a federal agent who violated Minnesota law. It doesn't matter who you are. Accountability means accountability for everyone, and I feel like I have spent my career ensuring that accountability. The true measure of a good county attorney includes many things, but here are the ones I think about. Do you protect the most vulnerable people in your community? Do you give a voice to those who can't be heard on their own? Do you hold justice and the rule of law above ideology? If the answer is yes, you'll be a great county attorney, and I've done that hard work throughout my career. I've seen what happens when it doesn't occur, and I'm committed to continuing that work as your county attorney. Protecting the most vulnerable among us requires a prosecutor who's both compassionate and willing to ensure appropriate consequences in the appropriate case for every defendant. The Hennepin County Attorney's Office is full of talented and hardworking public servants. They deserve a leader who can bring them into the next years with a steady hand, humility, and experience. And if you believe that the County Attorney's Office deserves a compassionate, experienced leader, I'd be honored to have your support. Thank you. Mr. Frazier.
Thank you. I just want to start off and say this, and I say this with all due respect, but we've talked a lot about experience, career prosecutors. I would say, Diane, with all due respect, you have the most experience out of all of us here. So we should stop this race and give Diane a chance to lead this office. But with all seriousness, though, I will say that the voters haven't asked for a career prosecutor since the 1970s. That's just not what they voted for. The voters want a leader that has a sense of urgency, that lives in the reality that we're in, that understands that you have to be connected with the communities that are out there. I am the only candidate coming from communities that have felt the brunt of this system in a way that impacts your lives and changes your lives and has collateral damage that will impact you for the rest of your life. I'm bringing that lived experience along with my professional experience. And again, this is an elected position. The role is to make sure I keep the politics away from the line attorneys, away from the support staff, to make sure that I advocate for and fight for them to have the resources they need to do their job to keep our communities safe. That is a leadership I will bring to this office. I think I have a very unique perspective coming from where I'm from, coming from a city council member, a state representative, a labor attorney, and a criminal defense attorney. All of that experience I will be bringing to this office. I am looking forward to leading the largest public law office and making sure that it is a model and an example for the rest of the state and also for the country. Thank you.
Ms. Krantz.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought up that no career prosecutor has ever led the office since the 1970s. The last one who tried was Tom Heffelfinger, who ran against Tom Johnson back in the 1980s. What I've seen over the years is a politicization of this office, and I'm going to make one promise to you if I'm elected county attorney: the politicization, which is a hard word to say.
Yes.
So how gets it ends the minute I take the oath of office. We've seen over the past 3+ years what happens when a county attorney's office becomes political and captured by an ideology. There's either no justice, unequal justice, and a decrease, definitely, in public safety. Justice should never be partisan. I'm going to tell you that's why I think that they made this a nonpartisan job, just like the sheriff. So it should not be partisan. And I am the only independent candidate not seeking any political endorsement. All suspects, all people who come into the system to be charged needed to be treated equally, whether it's a homeless person, a drug addict, a state trooper, or even a state employee who takes out political frustration on Teslas. All victims need to be heard, not just the politically convenient ones, but every single victim that has a case in that office. And all law enforcement needs to have the county attorney's office work with them to be able to put good cases together with respect. We need to look at the facts. We need to look at the evidence. And what's unfortunately been happening is outcomes are more important, meaning they are looking at what outcome they want and manipulating the facts to get to that outcome. I will not do that as a county attorney. I will be non-political, and I will serve the people and protect public safety.
Mr. Witt.
I think more than ever right now, not only voters, but every other person who works in our community and travels through our community needs trust. And it begins with the person who knows how to be at the table, who's lived every life experience that the county attorney office touches. The county attorney's office touches super poor people. It touches people who are refugees and immigrants, people who don't know how to speak English, people who are working their way to a better life. It touches the work of law enforcement, nurses, and everything else, school teachers, and all of that. So for me, I have been so blessed in my life to be able to have all of these experiences at a deep level. The refugee immigrant level, the mental illness level where my brother is a person with schizophrenia. I have stood with Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison when we sued President Trump when he came for LGBTQ communities, because I raised a trans kid, and I'm really proud of that. And I'm going to stand up and make sure that all of our kids are protected, that the LGBT community has a voice. I am an ex-cop who knows the work of law enforcement and what it's like to be able to think, am I going to come home at night? But also to be able to sit at a table and say, hey, you really didn't do that great. that day, and we can do better. And here's why. And we can bring people to the table. I'm also a prosecutor who knows what it's like to go into court and do the work of an actual line attorney. But I also understand what it's like to manage prosecutors and support staff, to go talk to judges when they're not necessarily being the best they are to the people that are working for us, to uplift the voices of victims. So now more than ever, I think that the voters and the people in our system want a person who can bring reasonableness, experience, sound judgment, and leave ego at the door, who has a demonstrated work history at the second largest county attorney's office, making sure that all the programs that we've run have been, frankly, a model for the state and the nation. And so right now, that's why I'm running, and I need your support, and I'm humbly asking for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pelican.
Want to again thank everyone for coming here in person and online. I want to thank Dorsey and ACS for putting this together, and my fellow candidates here, especially Hal, who gave me his water very generously.
You're welcome.
I was a little hot because I was running here because my husband is traveling for work right now, so I'm a single parent of a 100-pound Bernese Mountain Dog puppy. So this was really valuable. That my husband was on my mind listening to these people and thinking about what I wanted to close saying. I'm a lifelong Minnesotan. My husband was born in South Africa and came to America for the first time when he was 18 years old. And we've now helped his parents immigrate here. So we're also an immigrant family. And this year has been very hard. The fear, the uncertainty that we felt personally and seen certainly in our community. It's also been a really inspiring year. This has been a year of ordinary Minnesotans. And I mean that in the best sense possible. It's the people standing on street corners blowing whistles. It's the people driving meals to families that were too scared to leave the house, taking kids to school. And I'm running because we need a county attorney who is going to have the courage to lead and be worthy of the people that led the way, not only for the state, but the country and the world. And I'm also running because I think that progressives have lost the plot a bit. We need to make sure that progressive cities are livable, safe, thriving communities. And I'm worried that some of the missteps of the past 4 years at the same time are going to be used as a pretext to set us back to approach to prosecution from before the murder of George Floyd. And we can't do that either. We have to continue moving forward and have accountability and justice in the system. And I refuse to believe that we have to choose between them. That's why my founding values in this campaign are safety and justice. Thank you.
Hey, well, thanks to all the candidates. If we could give them a round of applause.
What distance? Wait, no, what day? Hold down. Hold down. Good back.
I also want to thank ACS for putting together this forum, and specifically Nate Webster, who did all the heavy lifting of putting this together. So thank you for that. Also to the Dorsey firm for providing the space for us. And thank all of you for coming out and spending a couple hours listening to this very important forum for a very important position. Also to those of you online, thank you for attending as well. One last reminder, there is a primary, or might be, I don't know, August 11th. And then, of course, there will be the general election, but I think sometimes people forget about a primary. So put that on your calendars as well. Make your voice heard. So with that, thank you and good night.